You're listening to Drummer Daily, the only daily podcast dedicated just to drummers, for a free video series explaining how you can become rock solid at playing drums with a click track in just 2 weeks in as little as 20 minutes per day. Visit boomclick.net. Hey there, welcome back again for another Drummer Daily. Glad you could join me today. I'm actually walking back down from my home studio where I bought some new overhead mics for my drums a couple of days ago, or I think, was it yesterday? I can't even remember now. I bought some new drum mics not too long ago, and just got back down from the home studio, from checking them out, making sure they were at least working how I expected them to and everything like that. And thankfully they are, so I'm excited about that. And I'm now actually, I'm actually walking into my kitchen. I am turning on our new espresso machine. Give me 1 second, you might hear it turn on here. 1 second. Yep. Anyway, just turned that on and gonna make myself some coffee here in a little bit. But interestingly enough, the new mics and the espresso machine are actually what I want to talk about today. And if you subscribe or receive my, not daily, it's not weekly, it's a couple of times a week normally, my newsletter that I send out, then you've probably already heard about this, but I thought I would talk about a little bit about new stuff. So a little backstory on this. First about the espresso machine. So my wife and I are very serious about coffee and about espresso, and we have been pretty much the whole time we've known each other. So years and years ago, it sounds like it was a long time, like a really long time ago. I think it was 8 years ago when we got married. Even right before we got married, we went ahead and we bought an espresso machine, a pretty nice one. We had home espresso machines before, but we thought we'd go for a nice espresso machine. And the thing is, even though they can kind of be expensive, if you're like us and drink coffee several times a day, or you like to have the lattes and things like that, having a nice espresso machine very quickly will actually save you a lot of money if you aren't willing to go without. So we weren't, and so we weren't willing to go without, so we invested in an espresso machine, and it was great. And then maybe 2 years ago, we decided it was time to upgrade our machine and get something a little nicer, because we both had kind of gotten better and better at making them at home, and kind of were running up against the limits of what the machine that we had could do. So we upgraded our machine, and we bought a used machine that was a very, very, very nice machine, and basically ran that one into the ground, and it started having some leaks and some other things that were wrong with it. And so we decided to upgrade that machine, and we just got this new machine, and this is even an upgrade from the previous one. So this is a very, 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 very nice espresso machine that we have at home now to make all of our favorite espresso-based drinks with. But the thing is this: if 8 years ago when we got married, if we had bought an espresso machine like the one we have now, the one we just got, we wouldn't really know. For the two things. First, we wouldn't know what to do with it. We wouldn't know how to work it. We wouldn't know how to, and it would be, there's a lot more variables that come up as you in espresso machines. As you get to more expensive and nicer machines that are able to do more, there's also a lot more variables that come into play, and a lot more things to basically mess up if you don't know what you're doing. It's great if you do know what you're doing. They're great options and tools and adjustments and things you can make to make some great espresso and really have something that's magical. At least to me, it's magical. But if you don't know what you're doing, that's just more opportunities to mess up with it, and more places to get distracted, and you won't know how to adjust things to make the best drink. The second thing is, if I had gotten an espresso machine like this years ago, I wouldn't really appreciate it for what it is. I wouldn't have a real appreciation for how much nicer this is than what I used to have, or how much worse it could be, and how lucky or fortunate I was to have what I have now. I have the perspective because I've given myself years and years and years of working on something that maybe wasn't the best you could possibly get, but learn to make the most of it. So I spent all these years getting better and better and better at making the absolute best espresso drinks you can possibly get out of a machine that wasn't the best. So there's kind of that. So let's keep that in mind, set that aside. The second thing is drum mics. So like I said, I bought some new drum mics, some overhead mics that I'm going to use. And but to back up before that, similarly, I have for the past, I don't even know when I bought this other mic that I had. It's probably 10 years old, and you'll hear my espresso machine. It's warming up. You'll probably hear it hissing and yelling at me in the background a little bit. Anyway, I don't even remember when I bought this overhead mic this mic that I've been using as an overhead. I didn't actually buy it as an overhead mic. I bought it as a voiceover mic, I think, originally for some podcasting way back in the day, and then it kind of switched to it was a large diaphragm condenser mic, like a Samson, fairly inexpensive. I think this mic was like maybe $80. But it was a great mic for learning on, doing vocals and recording some acoustic guitars and things like that. And like I said, recently I've been using it as an overhead. So if you've watched any of my drum videos that I've recorded at home on Instagram, that's the overhead mic. It's a very, very cheap overhead mic, but I've spent the past 10, 12 years working with it. And the same thing happened. I've spent all these years with less than stellar equipment like this mic, but I spent all of my effort and time in just extracting the very best sound you can possibly get out of that microphone. And just now feel like I'm really running up against the capabilities of that microphone and needing something better. And so I've upgraded. And now I will be able to fully appreciate how much better these new mics are. I'm having stereo mics instead of just one mono mic now. But having these new mics, I will be able to fully appreciate how much better they are because I've spent so much time, and I know that the thing that was holding me back now was my gear and not something else. In the same way, I know there'll be some new things to learn about positioning and everything like that, but I've spent so much time learning about how a single mic can affect the drum sound, that I know that it'll be a step up to learn and get better with two, but it's not such a giant leap that I have a million other things that I don't know about that I'm going to have to mess up in the process. So I'm able to now appreciate what I have, and I'm able to make full use of it. So the same thing, I just want to relate that back to drumming. And a lot of times I know that we don't all have the nicest, most expensive custom this or that drum set, and the best cymbals and brand new drum heads and every kind of drumstick and mallet and brush you can imagine. I know that we don't all have that. And what I want to encourage you to do and keep in mind is that there's a lot of potential in whatever gear you have. In those drums, even those old worn out drum heads, I know studio guys who never change their drum heads, and they've had them for years. So your heads being old on your drum set may not be the only reason why you're not happy with your sound. So what I want to encourage you to do is take a look at what you've got gear-wise, or what you don't have gear-wise, but what you're getting by with. And maybe if you're taking some time off around Christmas, you're out of school, or taking a little time off, you get to hang with the drums and just kind of sit and look, which I like to do. I'm like a little kid. I like to sit behind the drums and just look at them because I like the way drums look. Anyway, if you're doing some hanging out with your drums, kind of take stock of what you've got and maybe start to experiment and look at how can you make more of what you've got. How can you maybe really work hard on tuning those toms differently, or do some research and some learning about tuning and see if maybe you can get a better sound out of those toms that you've got, or that snare. Learn about tuning a snare. I've got some episodes of this podcast you can look up where I talk about tuning drums. Or maybe it's those cymbals you've got. Maybe they're not the best cymbals and they're real loud and abrasive or whatever the thing is you don't like about them, or they're really bright sounding. Well, maybe you can't obviously just make cymbals sound magically different, but maybe really listen to your cymbals and think about, okay, well, how in context of a whole drum set or even with a band can I hit these cymbals differently, strike these cymbals differently in a way that brings out more musical qualities out of them. Maybe these cymbals sound better if I just play them with brushes or hot rods or other things like that. Or maybe this cymbal doesn't like to be maybe sometimes cymbals don't like to be hit softly. They only speak really well when they're hit hard, or the other way around. But really kind of take stock of what you've got, play around with what you've got, and learn what the unique characteristics are of what you have, and make the absolute most you can out of the gear that you have. And then someday when you're able to upgrade part of that drum kit, you're gonna not only appreciate the difference that it makes instantly, but you'll also be able to really dive in and know that those all these different methods and these ways you found to extract different sounds out of drums or cymbals that you had that maybe weren't the best, all those techniques that you learned, now you can use those same techniques and vary what you do with these really nice cymbals or these really nice drums. And now you have this amazing toolbox of techniques to use to extract all kinds of amazing sounds out of what's new. So I know this is Christmas is when I'm recording this, Christmas time. This time of year, a lot of times is a time people start thinking about things they want and things they'd like to have. But I want to remind us that we need to be appreciative of what we do have, and that many people, and if you're listening to this, I hope that you have something that you can hit on, whether it's if it's not a drum set, it's spoons and pots and pans and boxes. There's some cool stuff you can do with that too. But be appreciative of what you have and make the most of what you have right now, so that someday when you're able to get something a little nicer, a little better, you can really appreciate it. All right, that's all for now, and I'll talk to you again very soon, maybe even tomorrow. Until then, bye.